So we have world-famous violist Adria Benjamin, who performs at some of the nation's foremost venues, including Congregation Beit Simchat Torah, where she is the maestra behind an amazing series of chamber music concerts that not only raise money for the synagogue, but raise our spirits during difficult times. And Adria will explain what she has chosen for us today.
Well, I spent quite a bit of time trying to come up with a viola ensemble version of What a Piece of Work is Man. And because that is one of my favorite scores, and I failed miserably last night. So Shefa Gold came to the rescue, and I see it's up on the screen. And again, you'll hear a little bit of an electronic sound coming out of my iPad with GarageBand. But that's the way I can make a duo.
Beautiful, Adria. And this is from Psalm 98, one of the Psalms of Kabbalat Shabbat. Remember, I said yesterday, Kabbalat Shabbat has 6 Psalms before Lecha Dodi for each of the days of the week. And it goes from Psalm 95. This was Psalm 98. Kabbalat Shabbat starts with Psalm 95 and goes through to Psalm 99, then to Psalm 29, then Lecha Dodi, and then 92, which is the Psalm for Shabbat. So that was a beautiful excerpt from the Kabbalat Shabbat Psalms, and they are quite different than those Psalms 2 through 7, which we've been studying, which are very much expressing agony. These are the Psalms of expressing joy, and often using the world of nature and the world of music. So fantastic. And Adria, I love your combo.
If I may just say, after going, I was actually panicking after my hair failure. But going through Shefa Gold's book, this one just made me feel like this is what we do each time we meet every morning.
Wow.
It just spoke to me in that way. So thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Adria. So meaningful. All right, friends, we're in Psalm 8. And I think we said we're going to start with altar. Am I right? Is that what I said we were?
I guess. Ready to go.
All right, we're going to go to altar. If you do have a Hebrew or a more traditional or one of the other, make sure you have whatever translation you have in front of you also. I know Harold sent all of these to you because I'm going to make some comparisons. Altar does, and I'll keep saying this to make sure we all remember this. Altar is trying in English to capture the essence of the Hebrew in both form and language. He's not trying to be super literal because sometimes he needs to, in order to get the English power, he'll try to both, so structurally, he'll stay very close to the structure of the Psalm. He'll stay to the same number of verses, and he'll try and divide up the Psalms and even the typographic layout to emphasize the biblical parallelism and the way the verses should be read. So he's very, very, very useful to look at for more than just the English he uses, because just by looking at the page here, you could see he's telling us what he thinks. And again, it's his opinion based on a great deal of scholarship, but it's his opinion, how to understand the structure of the sentences, so if it wasn't clear with the Hebrew, every time I scream out, et nachta, semicolon, pause, he's doing it in a way that hopefully the visual, which as we know, this is one of the powers of layout. It helps us read something in the way that whoever's in control of the layout can then emphasize whatever they think should be emphasized, or a flow or a structure. So that's one of the reasons, and I'll keep saying that to make sure everybody understands, that's who Robert Alter is, and the power of his translation, way beyond just what he's doing with the Hebrew to the English. And in general, that's not true of most of the other translators. He's really trying to capture more than just how do we understand the words. He wants to understand how is the gestalt, the layout, the flow, the architecture of the whole psalm. But that is why I think the weakness of his book is that it doesn't include the Hebrew. But I think he just thought, had he added the Hebrew, this book, which it's about this thick right now. Let me see, where's the camera? It's this thick. He made the decision that if he added the Hebrew, it would be double this, and that would be a lot less appealing. And as Marcia Melnick and I learned when we did the CBSTC door, layout when you add Hebrew English, and then when you add transliteration, so you have 3 different systems, is really, really hard to do. So this is also a much simpler book to produce. Okay, so verse 1. Lamanatseach. So Levi said conductor, and here Alter is saying lead player. He also doesn't try to translate gitit, but as you see in his commentary, he says, this is another musical instrument that has eluded persuasive identification. I love that line. That's fair. He doesn't say the things that we've said, trying to play with the root, that it's related perhaps to wine press, to the town of Gat, and as a result of the connection to the wine press, the idea that this would be a happy or a joyful or a celebratory psalm. Those are all interpretations that we'll see in the others. A David psalm. 2, Lord our Master. So here he does the Yud He Vav He, as he does always with the lower caps. I'm learning that phrase. And then for the phrase Adonenu, again, instead of saying our Lord, which would be probably a literal word, he's trying to get away from Lord because he just said Lord for Yud He Vav He. And by using master, he's doing 2 things. One is that he's trying to use a different word that indicates position or power. And also, as he says in his note on 2, by using master, he's getting to the majestic in sentence in the verse, in the second phrase of verse 2. So you see, Lord our Master, how majestic, which he's then, the reason that's important to him is not because it's an alliteration in English alone, but because it's echoing the alliteration in the original Hebrew. But the original Hebrew alliteration is not an M sound. And that's what I mean about Alter, trying to replicate in English something an English speaker would hear that will reflect. So in the original Hebrew, it's Adonai, Adonenu, Ma'adir. So Adonenu, Adir has an echo to it. And so he's trying to reflect that echo in master and majestic. This is a fantastic example of what I was trying to say theoretically of what Alter does. So this is English, but he's trying to reflect the Adir Adirenu alliteration in the Hebrew. Shimcha, your name, b'chol haaretz, in all the earth. The third, now this is an example of a verse, pasuk, that has 3 units, not only 2, which is the more standard, but 3 is totally acceptable and happens all the time. Whose splendor was told over the heavens? And again, he puts earth and heavens. Clearly, he's trying to create the sentences. We'll see the other translators don't care about that as much, where earth and heavens are both at the end of each of those phrases. So you have the merism that we learned about, of the earth to heaven, but the structure is the same. Verse 3, from the mouth of babes and sucklings. Sucklings is an absolute translation of a nursing, meaning even just a nursing baby, a baby who is completely dependent, a sense of complete dependence. And on the bottom, you could say, the meaning of this phrase, however, in Alter's commentary, however proverbial it has become, has not been satisfactorily explained. One distant possibility, and one of the Mefarshim uses this, God draws strength from consciously aware humankind made in his image, even from the weakest and youngest members, against the inhuman forces of chaos. Perhaps the innocence of infants is imagined as a source of strength. One way to understand that. And 3 continues. So 3 is a verse that has these multiple. So you see, from the mouth of sucklings and babes, you founded strength on account of your foes to put an end to enemy and avenger. So you see, unlike Levi, he doesn't translate lahashbit as meaning something about Shabbat, but rather to end to the enemy. Now, why is Shabbat, could Shabbat or lahashbit have something to do with end? So lahashbit, the shoresh shin bet taf, which we know very well as the word Shabbat or Sabbath or Shabbos, means the end of a week, means completion, means the day that God finished. So maybe it means not Shabbat itself, but maybe it goes back to the original meaning of Shabbat, of ending. So that's why he's going there. And you'll see this translation often. Levi is interesting because he actually translated as Shabbat. He uses the word Shabbat. So put an end to enemy and avenger. Hey, verse Daled, verse 4. When I see your heavens, comma, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars you fixed firm. Now this is a comma, so it's not the end of a sentence, but it's now going into the way Alter understands this to be now a quote. And see, Alter's punctuation helps us understand his translation as well. That the speaker is telling us, when I see your heavens and when I see the work of your fingers, when I see the magnificence of the universe you have created, the moon, the stars, the heavens, all of the glory of the universe, I am compelled to say, or I will say, quote, what is man that you should note him, and the human creature that you pay him heed? And you make him little less than the gods, with glory and grandeur you crown him. Going on to 7. You make him rule over the work of your hands, all things you set under his feet, sheep and oxen all together, and also the beasts of the field, birds of the heaven and fish of the sea, what moves on the paths of the seas. So you see, Alter is saying that entire thing is a soliloquy, which is why we think Hamlet takes his whole thing from here, or Hare then quotes Shakespeare. This is seen by many as a unit of a quote, a soliloquy. And the first part of the psalm is seen as setting up the speaker, and then this part is the soliloquy. What's interesting here is that Alter does not see the verse 10 as part of the soliloquy, but rather a coda, because it's matching. Remember, we looked at that. It's matching verse 2. Lord, our master, how majestic your name in all the earth. So he's seeing that really as a coda. And if you look back at verse 2, you'll see the exact same words. Lord, our master, how majestic your name in all the earth. So Alter is understanding this, and by putting the quotes, it really helps us see how Alter is seeing the flow. And he's seeing that verse 2 is kind of the, and it happens in music, right? Where you end with a coda that reflects the beginning of the music. It happens, and Alter saying that's how the poetry is to be read. All right, let's stop there for a second and see if there are comments or questions.
I don't see any hands. Let me take a quick look into chat. Let's see. Okay. Oh,
and it can be also be any questions as we layer the translations. If you want something based on a comparison to yesterday's or anything, fine.
So Yael Bachava says in modern Hebrew, shvita is a strike, as in a labor strike, stoppage of work. And then in number 6, Peter Klein raises a very important issue in verse 6, where it says Elohim, which is not another word for the one God, but seems to be lesser gods or plural gods. Should we understand that Hashem and the Israelites accepted the existence of other gods, but that our God ranks supreme in this hierarchy? This would give greater understanding that the Judeans had other deities available for worship and the regular admonitions against idolatry.
Who said that?
That was Peter Klein.
Peter, thank you for that. There's a lot of scholarship around that issue. That's a very big and important question. And of course, it depends who you ask, right? So a traditional Orthodox reading of the text would say, no, we Jews say there are 70 different names of God. Oops. There's 70 different names of God. And these are just a variety of names. Biblical scholars, especially starting in the 19th century, when we call the Wissenschaft, the scientific study of religious texts, absolutely would say that the Israelites were adopting names of other gods. And some of the Psalms, really, you can see it even more than this Psalm. And it's likely that they were probably just adopting other names. Honestly, like the way we use the word God, G-O-D. That didn't exist in Jewish language until the 19th century when it's from the German. And so now we use the word God, G-O-D. And it's simply we're adopting language of the cultures in which we find ourselves, but we're not referring to something else, we're referring to our God. Then there's a third school that says, absolutely, Jews, it's all synchronism, right? Syncretic in anthropology and in the study of language and of cultures. People live in different cultures, and probably they were praying to other gods. You know, it's probably in the ancient Near East, it wasn't so clean cut. So those are the three big buckets to answer that question. And yeah.
Ira Rosenblum has his...
It's a big, big area of scholarship, Peter. It's that I've just, done a very, very flyby.
Ira.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Rabbi, I am having a hard time wrapping my head around what the psalmist is saying or trying to say in verse 3. Is it God, so God founded strength on account of his foes to put an end to enemy and avenger? Can you talk about that a little bit?
You're right. It's a confusing sentence. That's why Alter says the meaning of this phrase has not been satisfactorily explained. I love that.
Cop out.
What?
It feels like a cop out.
I know. So we can play with it, but I'm not sure there's no simple answer to your question. In other words, there's no way I can resolve it. Walter goes on to say, because this is a psalm celebrating creation, there is a plausibility in the identification proposed by some scholars between this implacable foe and the primordial sea monster who, in Canaanite myth, must be subdued by the God of order so that the world can come into stable being. Imagery from that cosmogonic battle between gods is borrowed by a good many psalms. So that's going back to what I was saying before, that given that the ancient Near Eastern Israelites were surrounded by ancient Near Eastern religions, there's probably a lot of references to those images. So what Alter is saying, the common creation story found in a lot of ancient Near East religions is that there is a primordial sea monster who has to be subdued by the God of order. There are scholars who say we can see that in our own Jewish creation story. When we talk about the tohu vavohu, the chaos of that, it says there was a tohu vavohu, a total chaos, and then our God comes along and puts everything in order. A lot of people think that that's reflecting this ancient myth, and by myth I don't mean not true, I mean a deep religious story, that the way the world is created, which is in Canaanite and Akkadian stories that there's a sea creature that has to be subdued in order for the world to come into being. So Alter is saying that this verse is might be referring to that. Not contemporary foes and enemies, but you found it to put an end to enemy and avenger. He's making that leap because the rest of the psalm is so much about the celebration of creation. It's not at all like the Psalms we read where we're talking about the struggle with enemies, internal or external, and we have to overcome internal or external. This Psalm doesn't do that at all. And as you say, it seems to be totally out of place with the rest of the Psalm. So for that reason, Alter says he thinks this is referring to the primordial creation story. I'm not sure, but that's one way to resolve it, because you're right. It doesn't fit into the rest of the Psalm. But wait till you see how Fisher and Mitchell deal with it. It's very interesting.
Naomi
I'm whetting your appetites now, so you'll see. It's exciting. And whoops, my hair is real. I didn't wash my hair today, so now it's just sticking up.
Tohu vabohu.
Right, exactly. So what I want you to get excited by is as you start to chew on the problematic parts of the Psalms, it gets so exciting to see how different people resolve it. And you start to kind of get your muscles, your intellectual muscles get more and more nimble to be able to accept and work on a wider range of what does this mean? You start to say, wow, there's this range. And by looking at all of these different thoughtful people coming up with a way of struggling with it, it'll bring you something. But that's why I like to start with just the Hebrew, then just try to work out basic English without going, add Alter where we get a little bit layered, and now and Levy also, which stays pretty close, and then go to Fisher and Mitchell when they exist, and Bernstein.
Chazan Naomi Hirsch has her hand up.
Hi, so I'm going back to verse 2, and you talk a lot about it, Rabbi, about how different translators get around a translation. And I was really surprised by this. He says, Alter says in his commentary that what the Masoretic text has doesn't make much sense, so he revocalizes it. And part of me feels like that's a cop-out. Like, what gives him the right to decide that we need to revocalize? And to me, the idea that Tana would be an imperative makes the sentence really powerful and wonderful. What if the sentence meant, instead of passive, that God's splendor was told? What if it was, give, tell, preach, talk about, angels should sing. We should give honor and glory to God, and not just that it was done once upon a time. And I realize that if you take that meaning, the asher might get in the way. The asher is a little...
Right, that's why he does it. But I agree with you. But I like that he does it because I think it's so chutzpahdik. But I think it does, kind of like, it gives us permission to, to kind of play with things. If Alter can say, I don't like so remember what Alter is doing. Remember we talked about the Aleppo and the Leningrad Codex and then the Masoretic tradition. None of the vowels are original. All of the vowels we see have been added. So Alter is saying, since the vowels have been added, which can make a difference in how you read a word, I'm not gonna accept that as God-given. I'm gonna play with the vowels a little bit to change the tense. I think it's so chutzpahdik, but I kind of enjoy it because it gives a lot of permission to us. But that's why he's doing it, and you can only understand that now that we've studied how the vowels are only tradition, just about 1,000 years old. So he's saying, he thinks there's a scribal error here. He thinks there's some kind of transmission error, and he thinks that's not the correct way to read it. So
I appreciate his honesty. I mean, no, it's
I
really
cool
to get, if Harold had sent us the Psalm, which he wouldn't have, but without the commentary, we would gloss over it. So it's a great detail to notice.
I would love it if Alter actually published a bigger commentary because, he only does a couple of pages of them because he clearly he's so thoughtful. Anything he does has deep scholarship behind it. you know, and I think it would be wonderful if he one day published another book, which he couldn't do and come up with a book this size. But you're right, and this is a great example. But yeah,
Well, with the
you're
Hebrew,
absolutely right. Great, thanks for pointing that out.
with the Hebrew in it too, I would love to see.
Yeah.
all
Oh, yeah. It would just.
So we need to write him a letter. I mean, he's not, to put some
Right,
You
pressure
invite
on
him
him.
to our class.
that one of the professors at JTS is hard at work on the JPS commentary for Psalms, which does not exist yet, which will be one of those big books. And Rabbi is showing us on biblical translation.
This is this is Alter's book, The
Yes.
Art of Bible Translation. And it's not a very big book, but for those of you who love this stuff, it's a little dense. But for those of you who love language and thinking about translation, and it's basically all of his theory. Although he has a bunch of it in the beginning of this book, his introduction to this book is wonderful. I think, Harold, did you?
Yes, and I'm sending it out again on an email that will go out this afternoon.
So it takes a while. Be patient, especially if you're not used to reading this kind of stuff. It's a little dense, but it's worthwhile. And now that you're starting to appreciate and enjoy this art of translation, so his introduction to this book has actually a lot of this in it. But this is a wonderful book about the art of Bible translation. So nothing he does, not an iota he does, isn't deeply, deeply researched and considered. And so that's what's fun about it. He's not just trying to write poetry. He's trying to dig deep into the original in all different ways.
He's also very cutting on other translators when you read that art of Bible.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. He wouldn't appreciate that we give everybody equal weight. He doesn't think you should just write poetry, which I just totally disagree with. But he's very valuable. So that's why I want you to know him.
Poor Shep has had his hand up now for 10 minutes. Shep.
Okay, Shep.
I don't think it's a good question, but when they talk about God's majestic name, you're talking about Yud Hey Vav Hey, not the other 69 names, right?
Well, I asked you a little bit. I think it's a fantastic question because remember, I ended yesterday's class asking, why does it say how majestic your name in all the earth? What the focus on that? Why couldn't it say how majestic you are in all the earth? Why is name a part of that? And that's a good question, Shep. I'm not sure it's literally Yud Hey Vav Hey. That's a big question for this psalm, and you'll see in other psalms as well.
Maybe they're all majestic. Well, thank you.
Well, I was, if I may, when going through the Amidah this morning, or the Kaddish, Shemei Rabbah, is Aramaic for your great name, and we say it over and over and over again.
Yep.
And I sent you something that in Arabic, the very beginning of the Quran is the Bismillah, which in Hebrew would be B'Shem Adonai. And they say in the name of God or in the name of Allah. And it is the phrase that they repeat almost more than anything else.
Wow.
Bismillah. Ar-Rahman, the merciful one. Yael Bat Chava.
Hi, I wanted to get back to the issue of the Elohim. I like to think about it as God is plural, and there's many places in the Tanakh also where God is referred to in with feminine verbs. So when I talk to my kids about that, I say that God is referred to as male and female and as plural as they, which is kind of the non-binary way to talk about people in our own time. So it's a gender thing.
I think that's beautiful, and I think that reflects that we're seeing this through the lens of our time in a totally new way.
Lisa Brown. Oh, sorry.
Beautiful. I love that.
So I was thinking, we're a little past that, but just getting back to verse 3, it seems to me that the question could be, that can there be faith without struggle? It's like stepping back from, fighting against the primordial, whatever that word is, gods. We need struggle in order to have faith. And that even before they can speak, babes are given the strength to fight for that struggle.
Wow, I love, beautiful. Beautiful.
So we have exhausted all of our hands. if you want to go back to the text. And there's
Okay,
nothing
great.
like that.
I'd love, can we go to Fisher or Mitchell?
Absolutely, Rabbi. I have all of them for you.
Let's now that your appetites are truly whetted, which will we look at? Okay, so this is Mitchell.
We have Mitchell.
Okay, now keeping the other one in front of you as well. Unnameable God, how measureless is your power on all the earth and how radiant in the sky. When I look up at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the multitude of stars, what is man that you love him, and woman that you gladden her heart? Yet you made us almost like the angels and crowned us with understanding. You put us in charge of all creatures and placed your whole earth in our hands. All animals tame and wild, all forests, fields, and deserts, even the pure air of the sky, and even the depths of the ocean. Unnameable God, how terrible is our power on all the earth. Okay, reactions? Thoughts, looking at that one?
If I may give you mine, one of the troubling things that I saw in this psalm, which I loved, parts of this are my favorite psalm so far, is the wording that God put us in charge or made us to rule over animals, fields, forests, all that everything that God created is subject to our will, which does seem to be, can be used mistakenly. It has been used mistakenly in the Bible and here that, well, we don't need to worry about the environment because if a few animals go, that's fine.
Yep.
We were able to rule over these animals. And if we wind up polluting the earth because we need to mine coal, that's fine. God made us master of all of creation.
Yep.
And I think he changes this verse from unnameable God, how measureless is your power on all the earth, to the last one is unnameable God, how terrible is our power on all the earth. So he's playing with the text there to talk about our power is terrible on the earth where your power is measureless.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's fascinating, I think that's fantastic, Harold, is the way when I tried to emphasize before so folks would notice that in the original psalm, the language is exactly the same from that verse 2 to that coda. And here Mitchell is, I'm not saying it's wrong what he's doing, he's building on it. He's using the same, he's capturing that sense of an opening in a coda, but he's going somewhere else with it, which I think is fascinating. And you see he is not interested in the superscription. He kind of is leaving that behind. And again, I keep telling you to look for that because it's interesting. And I love Stephen Mitchell, unlike anything we've looked at so far, he is a poet and his task for himself is to write a poem. So his task, unlike Alter's task is to try and plumb the depths of the original language, culture, Hebrew, to get an English speaker to be connected to the original. Mitchell's interest is to write a great poem that is inspired by, but his changes I find fascinating. So the first thing we see, of course, is the superscription is gone and that the opening and closing are shifted a little bit, which is also often true in a coda, that even though the coda reflects back to the opening, it's often somewhat different. And that's what Mitchell's doing. Okay, other reactions? Thanks for that, Harold.
Falcon.
So what he does is puts straight into everybody's face what the original psalm implied. God made the heavens and the earth is ours, humankind. And he says that the original psalm in the 1, 2, 3, the third verse that Fisher has is, what is man that you love him? And in the original it goes, what is the son of man that you even consider? And here Fisher is saying, no, man and woman is included in this responsibility for the earth. That everything on the earth is ours to do with as we will, which is a terrible power. Is a truly terrible power.
Yep. And we've witnessed how terrible it can be. I think that Saul is a fantastic point. Mitchell is saying that there's a repetition that we've noticed. We have Enosh in line 5, and I have said line 5 in a 10-verse poem. Line 5 is that fulcrum because it all of a sudden humanity, what is man that you love him? So it's Enosh in the first phrase, and then it's Ben Adam or Ben Adam in the second phrase. And what Mitchell wants to bring out is that it's inclusive of women. He's clearly uncomfortable using the word man alone, and from his moment in time needs to expand that. So that's very interesting.
Sarah Sloan.
The unnameable God strikes me as interesting and very, very powerful, that there's this vast being that can't even be named. It would also be, as we were just talking, gender neutral in a way that Adonai or Lord always seems to me to be male language.
And I think that's interesting. A nameable God also might be a reference to Yud He Vav He itself, saying we can't know what, and I think it's a way of trying to emphasize the point that we can't know God's name. And I think that's kind of a very clever and interesting way to do that, if that's in fact what he's doing here, he's saying unnameable, but he's using God. So a nameable God is a little bit of a tension there, but I like it a lot. Thank you, Sarah.
Judy Hollander.
I've been wrestling with this one, and also from some studying we were doing, there's 2 creation stories, and in each one of them, God charges humans differently. And the first one that we like better, it's like you have total dominion over everything. But the one in Genesis 2 is that you guard. It has shomer in it, and so there are different ideas of the role of humans in taking care of, or however they're going to steward this in a good way or a bad way. And I just think it's very interesting. I've been really doing a lot of thinking about it in relation to this psalm.
Beautiful. And you notice what's missing in this psalm. Do you notice the things that are in the original psalm, in this, the original, or altar, obviously altar's the original, that he just doesn't deal with besides the superscription? So what a poet chooses not to respond to, since he's a published poet, we're allowed to ask a bit too. So do you notice something it's the verse that Ira mentioned, which is a complicated verse, and he kind of just doesn't deal with it. The whole verse about babe, out
of the mouths of babes. Yeah,
the verse 3 is just not even reflected here. I think Ira, what he did is he looked at this verse and he couldn't make sense of it, so he just said, okay, it's not inspiring me, so I'm not going to. So I think that's interesting.
And he sidesteps Elohim as angels.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but exactly, because it says, the original Hebrew, of course, says that we're a little less than Elohim. And the Mitsuda translation also says angels also, which I found interesting.
Cindy Levitz.
Hi. So when we write G-D as not writing out the whole name of God, does that have anything to do with this, God, the name of God being so majestic or unnameable that we can't write it all out?
Yes, it has become that tradition. It's not clear whether it's necessary, but I think people have done it out of respect, out of an extra measure of respect. But the name of God that can't be mentioned or thrown out is Yud He Vav He. So at CBST, any book that has Yud He Vav He in it, any piece of paper, we bury. And when we do a funeral, we bring boxes of those papers and books, and we put them in the grave with the casket. Mm-hmm. We treat them like clay kodesh, vessels of holiness.
Yes, thank you.
Lori Kropman.
When I read the word angel, some of us are studying Maimonides, and it made me think of the unnameable God. God just is. God doesn't do anything. But the angels, we are agents. of God, and we're like the angels, so we're like the agents doing all this, but God is up there unnameable, just is, not doing anything. So it made me think of Maimonides.
Interesting. Beautiful.
And Regina. Regina Linder, are you still with us?
Yes.
Unmute.
I find the attempt at gender equality a little bit amusing, I guess, because it says for a man, God loves you, i.e. go forth and rule, and for women, gladden your heart. And it just reminds me of many old days when you were told to just smile, you know.
Yeah.
We die hard, right?
Yeah. I feel like that does date it in a way that is a little jarring to me also.
Mm.
And then you can see him trying, you can see him trying to say, oh, I don't want to just use the word man, but how do, just, it doesn't feel very natural for him to think, it does. I find it jarring also. But I do like, can we just go back for a second, Harold, and then we'll end. I know we'll do a outtake.
And actually, I have something that I need to share with you.
Okay. I do think it's interesting that he tries to, with all the references to animals, and Elle was so helpful to us to look at what the languages of the, no, we're not doing, down to, is that he just tries to find a way to express, and I do like that a lot. How he expresses all the animals, that he wanted to, all animals, tame and wild, forests, fields and deserts, pure air of the sky and depths of the oceans. He's really jumping off from that original language, which was naming particular kinds of animals. And, with the, and here he just tries to create a little different imagery, which I like a lot. Creatures, whole earth, animals tame and wild, forests, fields and deserts, pure air of the sky and depths of the ocean. So I like what he does there. I think that's very, you get a sense of the grandeur and the depth and breadth. And if you look back at the Hebrew, you realize he's doing that poetically.
So, Rabbi, if I could take a minute.
Absolutely, yep.
I just got news from Rabbi Rapport, because there have been many, many questions here about the Hebrew classes. And she gave me the schedule, which I'm going to put into chat right now. However, she also explained, hold on, here it goes into chat. Everyone, this is the schedule for the Hebrew, for the Hebrew classes. However, Rabbi Rapport reports that there were some issues with the back-end registration system because I believe, Rabbi Kleinbaum, you can specify that they wanted to make it possible to either pay full price or make a donation of any amount, and it was just difficult engineering.
Yes.
So the schedule is set. Please don't put anything else in chat right now so that this doesn't disappear. The Aleph class, the rank beginner, I have never even seen the letter Aleph, is at 9 a.m. Tuesday and Thursday, so you can take that class and you can be at the extended session and then show up for Psalms. Bet, which is advanced beginner, 11 a.m. Monday and Wednesday right after class here. And Gimel, which is intermediate, is at 6 p.m. And then she also mentions that Rabbi Atara Cohen will be teaching two classes, each one night a week, Mishnah, Brachot, and Talmudic stories of the rabbis. Do you have anything to add to that to enlighten our group?
No, and I think the idea is this is an 8-week session, if I'm correct about that, an 8-week session. And yes, we've been having computer problems because we don't just want to have one price. We want to be able to let everybody join at whatever cost. And we don't have great technology at the synagogue, unfortunately. It's supposed to be replaced, but it's taking forever.
So the classes are scheduled to begin on Monday. So mark your calendar, clip this out, copy it out of chat. I will be emailing it. But we're standing by for the registration.
Yeah.
At least we have the schedule, so you can.
Yeah, so you can see.
Now,
and if you're not clear about what class to be in, you should be in touch with Rabbi Rapport, and she'll clarify if you have some. And this is we really got, and a lot of the folks in both this and in the Pirkei Avot class, we really want to help people get some basic skills. And if you're interested in having an adult bar bat mitzvah, we won't be having a formal class this year, but the most important thing to do is to learn Hebrew. And a year from September, we'll start the next cohort.
Okay. So there is no link to register yet. As I said, they do not have the prices. The moment, trust me, the moment I get this link, I will drop everything and you will get the link in several different ways. Which nights is Rabbi Cohen teaching? I don't know yet. Who's teaching the Hebrew classes? Mia Rothstein, if I am correct.
Yes, Mia is teaching all of the classes. So, and then we're going to make some possibility if people want and need some one-on-one tutoring in addition to the classes, because it can be hard as an adult learner to make these leaps. It's not easy. We all recognize that. There'll also be some possibility for some one-on-one in addition to being in the class to help folks get as much support as you can this summer to get some more skills.
Adria, would you like the text back up, or would you like us to close our eyes and just be taken away by your beautiful playing?
Harold, I don't know what you're drinking. It's that haircut. Okay.
I'll put the text up.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Adria. Thanks, everybody. And tomorrow is Thursday. Am I right? Is today Wednesday?
Yes.
Or is today Thursday?
No, today is not Thursday. It was not
Today's not Thursday. Okay, so tomorrow we're going to do Fisher and Bernstein. And I think we'll conclude Psalm 8. So do any other extra reading today. And the idea is, Harold, right, on Monday, we'll start with personal. So by 5 o'clock on Sunday,
they have to get to Anika Cohen. Everybody has the address. Okay. Thank you. And I'm going to stay for just a minute. If you have any other questions about the classes that I can take to Rabbi Report.
Right. And I have one more point I want to make. Some of you have not asked a question or made a point during class, and that's totally fine to be silent and just experience the class. But I want to encourage you, if you have a question, don't be shy about it, either by putting it in the chat or raising your hand. Everything is legitimate. There is no out of bounds when it comes to studying this stuff together, and I'm eager to hear and be in contact with all of you. So just don't be shy if there's something you want to say, but it's also okay if what you enjoy is just being surrounded by everybody's comments and questions. But I just want to encourage people that whatever you're thinking or confusions you have or questions you have, if you have a question, chances are other people have questions similarly. If you don't understand something, chances are other people don't understand it. If I've said something that's not clear, chances are other people. So don't feel like anything you have is not valuable, okay? Really eager to hear from everybody and encourage everybody to feel comfortable to participate in whatever way is good for you. All right, my friends, see you tomorrow.